Good afternoon, everybody. Chopin Martin Millet here. Hope you're going well. I've had a fantastic week this week. I was in Milano for the Winter Olympics. This was the second time I had ever been to an Olympics. 26 years after my first one in Sydney 2000, but it was actually the first ever Winter Olympics I had ever attended. Now, I've been wanting to go to Winter Olympics for most of my life, but haven't really had much of the opportunities because the Winter Olympics weren't really closer to where I was living in Europe. But for the next two Winter Olympics in Milan and the French Alps, if I'm still living in the United Kingdom by the time the Winter Olympics in the French Alps, I will definitely go to the 2030 Winter Olympics. So today, we're going to talk about a historic victory for Brazil at the Winter Olympics yesterday. A skier called Lucas Pinheiro Brathen, who was born in Norway to a Norwegian father and Brazilian mother, but has lived both in Norway and Brazil. He won Brazil's first ever medal at a Winter Olympics, the first tropical nation to ever win an Olympic medal, even if it was a gold medal, and also the first athlete from South America to ever win a Winter Olympic medal. And also, Brazil is now the third nation in the Southern Hemisphere to ever win an Olympic medal. Sorry, Winter Olympics, to be precise. So when you come to think about it, this man, okay, he grew up in Norway and he lived a bit in Brazil, but he had quite a good advantage because he spent all of his life in Europe with good ski fields and good training equipment, and he competed for Norway. But then all of a sudden, after a break, he decided to honor his mother's ancestry and compete for Brazil, which there's no problem with that whatsoever. Now, also in the field, the guy who came last in this event was actually competing under the flag of Eritrea. Now, you may be thinking, Eritrea, does it get snow? No, it doesn't. I've been to Eritrea myself, and the closest thing I saw to snow was, like when it hailed. Like, it hailed for an hour in Asmara, and then all around Asmara it looked like there was snow, but it was actually just frozen, like, what do you call it? It's things that come out of that cloud, like frozen pieces of ice. Definitely wasn't snow. But it made me think about in the history of the Winter Olympics, there have been many tropical nations who have competed at the Winter Olympics and have basically just, like, I hate to sound this, but, well, failed. Ended up in the bottom half of the pack. But there has been some success because before this man, Lucas, won a medal for Brazil, Brazil's best finish at a Winter Olympics was 9th in women's snowboarding cross. And I can clearly remember when that happened. That happened in 2006, I believe. Yes, because I remember watching that in Australia when the Winter Olympics were on. And I saw a Brazilian snowboarder, and I thought, why is she in this competition? I thought Brazil doesn't have snowfields. Turns out, according to the Google check, Brazil gets a small amount of snow, but I don't think they get much snow as compared to its neighbors, Argentina, and Argentina's other neighbors, Chile, because Argentina and Chile both get snow and both have mountains. But the thing is, it doesn't always have to be like, you don't always have to be born to compete in a nation. Like the guy, as I was saying, the guy who came last yesterday in the men's giant slalom was competing under the flag of Eritrea. But he had never lived a day in Eritrea. He lived all of his life in North America because his parents fled Eritrea during the War of Independence. But because he was interested in skiing, he decided to compete for Eritrea. That's perfectly fine because you're allowed to compete for your parents' nationality. Because it's just like in football, there were some Australians who decided to compete for Croatia or Italy instead of Australia. But we're going to go through a list of countries who have competed in the Winter Olympics, but these are tropical nations. So these are nations that are between the Tropic of Cancer, the Equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn. So majority of Brazil's country lies between the Equator and the Tropic of Capricorn. So Brazil is mostly a tropical nation, but my country, Australia, has a small part of its land in the tropics, but we're not really considered a tropical nation. So we're looking at Africa. Okay, I remember 1998, there was a skier from Kenya competing in the men's 15 kilometers cross-country skiing, Philip Boyd. Came last, but they didn't discourage him from competing in a few more Olympics, Winter Olympics. Even though his country succeeds more in athletics, and since then Kenya has actually competed a few more times in cross-country skiing as well, and also just recently in alpine skiing. So in Africa, at this Winter Olympics, we've got athletes from Benin, Eritrea, Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, as I just said, Madagascar, Nigeria, yeah. And none of those countries have any snow, but those athletes competing for them, I reckon the majority of the times they would live in Europe or North America. But it's quite an interesting story for Guinea-Bissau, because this guy competing for Guinea-Bissau, he's not really Guinea-Bissau and he's not African, he's actually Taiwanese. Just a Taiwanese worker who set up a business in Guinea-Bissau and decided to become the first of Guinea-Bissauian athletes to compete, which really sounds crazy. Because an American person could basically pay $200,000, get a passport from a Caribbean nation, and decide to compete for the Caribbean nation. That happened in 2014 when a couple from America and Italy obtained Dominican passports and competed for Dominica at the Winter Olympics, but sadly they didn't leave their mark. But basically the wife, the wife injured herself before the competition, and the man actually got struck down with food poisoning, competed and didn't finish his race, so that was a bit of an embarrassment for the two. But also, in Africa, like South Africa has competed at the Winter Olympics many times. No success whatsoever, but South Africa does. I'm sure South Africa does have ski fields, and South Africa does get snow, but it's its neighbour. It's its neighbour, Lesotho. I was in Lesotho a couple of years ago, and I saw ski fields there, and I thought to myself, why doesn't anybody from Lesotho ever bother to compete at the Winter Olympics? They could easily compete in alpine skiing. They have ski fields, for crying out loud. But they just don't invest the money. Because, also, back in 1988 Winter Olympics, there was an athlete from Swaziland. But he wasn't from Swaziland, he was actually Scottish born. He just moved to Swaziland and decided to compete. He competed in alpine skiing and finished at the back of the pack. Quite embarrassing. So then we go into the Americas. We've had competitors from Bolivia, British Virgin Islands, Brazil, Cayman Islands, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominica, Ecuador, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Netherlands, Antilles, which is basically just all split up with like Curacao, Dutch Caribbean, we're talking about. Honduras. Yeah, so Honduras competed in 1992, they haven't competed since then. Jamaica, no brainer, the famous Jamaican bobsleigh team. Funny enough, Jamaica had a really good result in 2010 when they sent a ski cross guy who was actually born in America, and he finished in the top 10. It turns out, like, you don't really, like, you could live in North America but compete for your mother's country. But that's perfect. But I reckon there are plenty of, like, athletes on the team from America and Canada who are of African descent competing for their adopted country. So we've also had athletes from Paraguay. I remember she competed in women's slopestyle, finished at the back of the pack. Peru, Puerto Rico, even though that's a part of America, Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, and US Virgin Islands. I remember reading somewhere the US Virgin Islands competed in the bobsleigh and they painted a lizard at one Winter Olympics, finished at the back of the pack. But there was a woman who named herself Grandma Luge. She competed in luge many times, always finished at the back of the pack, even though she's an American citizen. She could easily train in America on luge tracks, but always competed for Virgin Islands and always finished at the back of the pack. And then let's go into Asia Pacific. We've had competitors from American Samoa, Fiji, would you believe it? There was a guy, He's competed for Fiji a few times. They've sent athletes for alpine skiing and cross-country skiing. Always finished at the back of the pack. Guam competed in 1988, even though Guam's an American territory. Hong Kong has always sent somebody to compete in short track speed skating and ice skating, but also this Olympics they competed in alpine skiing. I don't expect Hong Kong to ever medal at a Winter Olympics, even though that they are considered a part of China and they could easily train with the neighboring Chinese. They will never ever really tend to be successful Winter Olympics. Then we've got Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore. Now, these three countries, they got no snow whatsoever, but what do they have? They have ice rinks. Yes, they have ice rinks. The Philippines have always sent athletes to compete in ice skating. That is a smart move because your country's got ice rinks, you can train, you don't really need snow, you just need an indoor ice rink, or you just need maybe an indoor ski field to do training. In a country like Singapore could build a indoor ski field like they do in Dubai. That's a brainer. And then also we've had athletes from Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Tonga. Now, it was a funny story about Tonga competing at the Winter Olympics. A guy changed his name to... He changed his name to Bruno Baneri. The name of a lingerie company. And he basically just to gain sponsorship, and he finished at the back of the pack. But I think he did much better than the Australian luge. When you think about it, both Australia and Tonga do not have luge tracks. Like my country, Australia, 6th largest country in the world, no bobsleigh tracks whatsoever. But we finished second in skeleton at the last Winter Olympics in 2022. That was a huge surprise. There's a guy who competed for East Timor at a couple of Winter Olympics, but he grew up in France. Yes, he was a French citizen, but had Timorese ancestry, competed for East Timor, always finished at the back of the pack, even though he always had access to the Alps. And then, you think about other countries that don't really get much snow, like, let's just say, Chinese Taipei, Bermuda, India, Mexico, South Africa, Uruguay, and also countries like north of the Tropic of Cancer, like Morocco, Algeria, Egypt. They've all competed at Winter Olympics, but never really had any success. But there was this one man, he competed for Morocco at a youth Winter Olympics. He won gold, despite the fact that he was born and grew up in Canada. But when he went to compete at the Adult Olympics under the Moroccan flag, he basically finished at the back of the pack, even though, yet again, he lived all of his life in the ski fields of Canada. So, you don't really need snow to succeed in the Winter Olympics. You just need to find good training facilities. When you think about the Australian athletes, our history at the Winter Olympics was we really sucked for so many years. And then we finally, we had a few top 10 finishes with a speed skater, but then short track speed skating 1994, we won our first medal, a bronze in the relay, all because the Canadian team crashed. But then Dali Stegel, I remember watching her when I was 12 years old, winning bronze in the ladies slalom at Nagano. And that I can clearly remember the day she still won, because I was in primary school. But then our first ever gold medal that happened in Winter Olympics was all because everybody in the pack of the men's 1,000 meter short track speed skating fell over, and Stephen Bradbury won gold by fluke. But you gotta not forget that Annelies Kopperberg from New Zealand, she was the first ever athlete from the Southern Hemisphere to medal, any color medal at the Winter Olympics, when she won silver in skiing. Now, I'm part New Zealand myself, I've never lived in New Zealand, but from what my brother has told me, New Zealand has better ski fields than Australia. So at the last Winter Olympics, New Zealand succeeded Australia by winning 2 golds to our 1 gold. But at this current Winter Olympics, Australia has now won 3 golds, a silver, and a bronze, and so this is our best ever Winter Olympics. So, I would like to see people, who have African or Latin or Pacific Island ancestry. If they live in a country like in Europe or North America or Australia that has ski fields, I would like to see them compete at the Winter Olympics under the ancestral flag. And who knows, you know, maybe one day the Jamaican bobsleigh team could win gold, or we could get, you know, a silver medal for Hong Kong in short track speed skating. Or how would it be nice if this could happen? There was actually 2 skiers competing for the United Arab Emirates, a country that doesn't have natural snow but has indoor ski fields. There's a New Zealand lady competing under the UAE flag. I would be totally shocked if she wins a medal. I would be absolutely stunned, but then again, some countries actually do pay athletes to compete for them, which is, it's a bit sketchy because there are many African athletes who compete for the Gulf nations. So come to think about that. Anyway, this is Martin the Middlehead, over and out.